Thank you. Welcome to the Jeju Forum for Peace and Prosperity 2022. We'd like to begin this session titled A Special Education Freedom Zone that starts a new local era of decentralization and balanced development. And once again, you can use channel number 1 for Korean and channel number 2 for English. Let me introduce today's moderator. The moderator of the session is Mr. Oh Jung-kun, Chief Secretary of the Special Committee for the Regional Balanced Development of the 20th Presidential Transition Commission. He won his doctor's degree at Manchester University of the United Kingdom and served major roles in Bank of Korea, Southeast Asian Central Banks, and etc. He worked as a professor at Korea University and Graduate School of Information and Telecommunications of Kongo University. He served as a chairman at the Korean International Finance Association as well, and is currently working actively as the president of Korea Finance ICT Convergence Association, Advanced Economic Strategy Forum, and Korea Normalization Forum. And with that, I would like to hand over to the moderator.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be talking about a special educational freedom zone that starts a new local era of decentralization and balanced development. We need to ensure that we have a balanced development of different regions and should be able to give opportunities to different regions to grow. And that is why what President Yoon has been talking about, giving opportunity, giving chance for the regions to grow. And for regions to grow, I believe that education has to be provided. There has to be educational basis. Let me introduce the speakers and panelists. Well, Chairman Kim Byung-jun of the Special Committee for the Regional Balanced Development at the 20th Presidential Transition Committee was supposed to give us the congratulatory remarks, but it seems that his arrival is being delayed because of the air traffic issue. And also Professor Barry Eikenberry, well, he was supposed to join us via Zoom, but it seems that his Zoom connection is being delayed, so he'll give us his talk as soon as he's connected. And so we will have to skip the congratulatory remarks and the presentation for the time being, and we'll be listening to the congratulatory remarks and presentation by Professor Eikengreen. And so we're going to ask Professor Ki-Yu Lee to go first. And Professor Ki-Yu Lee is an honorary professor at the Law School of Inha University. And he has conducted a broad research into regional development. And he was also a member of the Special Committee for the Regional Balanced Development of the 20th Presidential Transition Committee. And next to me, I have Professor Kim Jeju, who is a professor at Myungji University. And he is also the next president of Korea Business Administration Society. And we also have Professor Park Ki-kwon, who is a professor of Sangmyeong University. He also served on the Special Committee for the Regional Balanced Development of the 20th Presidential Transition Committee. And he is also and our last panelist is Hyun Il-seng, and who used to be the mayor of Seogwipo in Jeju. And she was also on the Special Committee for Regional Balanced Development of the 20th Presidential Transition Committee. And we're going to be asking Professor Lee to go first. That is with his presentation. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to our session. We're going to be discussing education. And as for our education special zone, Well, we have to think about concentration of population or the concentration of economic activities here in Korea because they are quite serious. I mean, that issue is quite serious because the population concentration is like half the population resides in Seoul metropolitan area, and also about 50% of all the economic activities take place in Seoul metropolitan area. As a result, the jobs, well, more than half the jobs here in Korea are around the Seoul area. And such a concentration of jobs, people, and economic activities are are very much obstructing in the harmonization of the people. I mean, that is, to have, I mean, that would have people be against each other. And in this whole metropolitan area, because of overpopulation, there is reduced competition. And non-Seoul metropolitan area, there's not enough population, therefore that leading to decreased competition. So overall, on for as a country, this is leading to reduced competition. So this is a national issue that we do have to address. So why is there concentration of population? I believe one of the reasons is that the young people, they come to Seoul metropolitan area for education. And for all the older population, they come to Seoul metropolitan area looking for jobs. So if we create jobs in local cities, in local areas, you would say that we would be able to create jobs. And in Ulsan, there are large companies. The executives, they work in Ulsan during the weekdays, but during the weekends they go back to Seoul area. So they don't really live in Ulsan, and the reason is that it's all because of education of children. So education is essential for a balanced development of the nation. And just creating jobs is not enough to have a balanced distribution of population. So education, well, I think this is the most important factor for residents or for human settlement, if I may talk about this in a broader concept.
거주하시는
So the people who live outside of Seoul, that is in provinces and local cities, so are they happy with the education that is provided at their communities? No. And that is why they are coming to Seoul metropolitan area. But does that mean that schools in Seoul are better? Not really. So schools in Seoul and Gyeonggi province, they're not exactly better than schools in other cities. And the competition is so fierce that there has to be private education. And so they have good private education service providers in Seoul metropolitan area. And here we have so many regulations on schools. And so the schools are just not able to provide the educational services that parents want. So parents are not happy with schools, so they send their children overseas, or they have their children receive private lessons or seek education at alternative educational systems. So what's really important is that we have to have diverse forms of schools that can satisfy different needs and demands of parents and students. And that's what we're trying to do with this economic zone, this special economic zone. There have been so many regulations on educational service providers. And these regulation actually stifle this system. I mean, so the system cannot provide diverse education on about what the school buildings should be like, and what the overall land size should be. So very specific rules and regulations, and even about how much profit producing assets schools should have. I mean, schools are not about buildings. I mean, do schools really need to own buildings? Well, for public good, I mean, it would be nice for the schools to be able to own the buildings, but that's not an absolute necessity. So we have to have different ideas about education and schools as well. So people think about different educations or education systems, but they're not able to realize these, the ideal education systems that they have because of these regulations. And there's also the issue of textbooks. Schools are forcing textbooks on students, and how the textbooks should be created, how they should be published, and how what the price should be. This is all mandated by the government. I mean, I'm sure that is done for the public good, but I do believe they are obstructing our path towards more of autonomous training, more creative training. In case of the United States, they gave choices, they give options to schools to choose the books they want to use to provide education. And they it is up to the schools to choose the textbooks, and schools can actually come up with their textbooks. So the educational curriculum are determined by these textbooks, which are mandated by the government, and which makes education so, I don't know if this would be the right phrase, quite boring. And providers, it has to be the school entity, legal entity that can establish schools. Parents, organizations, or research centers, or companies. They cannot come up with their own schools because of all these regulations. And I think we should allow for different players or different actors to be able to provide education, so that we would be able to provide the more creative education. So we should be able to provide diversified education, because parents nowadays have different demands.
뭐 그런 면에서도
And these demands should be satisfied by provision of different and diverse education. And when setting up schools, there is minimum number of students, excuse me. But there are some education or some educational concept that can only be realized with small number of students. And at some locality, they are closing down schools if the number of students is less than 20. And I actually went to the school in another country with only about 17 students. Everybody was quite happy. So just because my school is now is no longer in existence because it was closed down because of decreased number of students. And so why economic zone? And if we deregulate too much, well, this could lead to problems. Regulations are put in there for public good in the first place. But sometimes regulations stifle innovation. So for some localities, we should do a deregulation and enable economic zones so that we can satisfy community members' of demand for education. So they should try this. So they should use economic zone, special economic zone, as a test bed, to test different education and educational systems. I understand that there are special economic education zones around the country. And the education zone, special zone that I'm talking about here, is not for any sort of profits. And so let's do away with regulations for this particular locality so that many different types of education can be provided. So that is what I mean with this special education zone. So what sort of concept should we apply for schools that are already there, for teachers, about the curriculum, about students, about textbooks? Well, those regulations have to be be removed so that educational service that satisfies the parent can be provided, and thereby guarantee choice in terms of choosing schools. And we do see many alternative educational systems or education schools, but there are problems with such schools. But if such a school is approved, they can receive the support from the government. If not, they are not able to receive any sort of support from the government. And so parents choose these alternative schools because they were not happy with the established schools. But if they are not able to receive support, these schools are not receiving support from the government, well, isn't that a discrimination? All the schools, all the students here in Korea are supposed to receive support from the government, from the state. And so these schools should be able to accept different types of students, because some of these unauthorized alternative schools that are brought in from overseas are very expensive. So only children from wealthy family are able to go to such schools. But we should allow these schools to receive financial support from the government so that students from families with less means can also attend such schools. And alternative schools, yes. Well, we do not know much about them. And so schools should provide detailed information to the parents so that they can help with the decision-making process of the parents. And about, where the educational special zones should be established. I think maybe cities or gun. Also, it should be the local autonomies. And this is something quite exceptional. So we should allow for exceptions for small local communities. And we should allow communities where there are a lot of people living to be able to host such schools. And rather than having many number of educational zones, I think it would be nicer just to have maybe 4 and 5 such educational zones first, and then expand to wider areas, to more areas. And of course, we do need regulations to decide which will be the body or the entities that are going to be giving the approvals. And the local government should be able to make an application to the central government to be able to set up educational zones in their local areas. So what are sort of benefits we can expect from educational zones? When there are many different types of schools available, well, that's going to increase the scope of choices for the parents and thereby enhance the satisfaction of parents about schools. And there could be many different excellent schools that can be born as a result. And that, in return, would improve quality of life at these local communities and thereby contribute to a more balanced development of the nation. And the unnecessary regulations should be boldly deregulated so that schools here in the country can effectively improve satisfaction. With that, I would like to conclude my talk. Thank you.
Thank you. About the Korean education, and for the sake of more innovative and creative education, which we lack, he gave us a presentation. SK Hynix actually had decided to build their factory in Gumi because Gumi decided to give them favorable condition because the SK Hynix couldn't move to Gumi because they couldn't source talent there and decided to be in Yongin. And I think this proves that what Commissioner Lee has just mentioned in his presentation. And also, several days ago, we had a presidential meeting and we talked about coding education. President himself went to some private academy to learn coding, and the need for teaching young, like primary children, primary school students of coding was pointed out. But I hear that there was an opposition that we shouldn't teach these kids with coding and we cannot do so. And I was perplexed. There are 200,000 people who graduate from the university, and half of them move to the metropolitan area. Why? They want to get a job in the good IT companies located in Seoul area. And there's this concept of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We have been focusing on this STEM for about more than 10 years. But participating in this presidential meeting, I could learn that through education, we have to nurture new type of talent that befit fourth industrial revolution. And another thing I have learned is that many good talents are failing to move to the local areas. So thank you for this wonderful presentation. And we were supposed to listen to the congratulatory speech of Chairman Kim Byung-jun, but I think the speech was a little bit delayed because of the delay in the flight. We finally have him here. He is currently the Emeritus Professor of the Kookmin University, and please welcome Chairman Kim with a big hand. Good afternoon. I am Kim Byung-jun. I shouldn't be applauded. I should apologize. It is partly my fault, but it was a weird day. There was a delay in my flight. There was this announcement that the flight is going to be delayed, and I waited a while, and there was another announcement that it's going to be delayed a little more. And when I got to the Jeju International Airport, and I had to take the bus, and the bus actually stopped like on and on and on when trying to take these people who got off the plane to the airport. It was a weird day. But anyhow, I'm sorry that I'm late. Listening to what the presenter just mentioned, I think all the major points I wanted to say are already covered. So I just want to deliver my full sense of congratulations to you. If I may derail a bit, after becoming a professor, which was a long time ago, I think it was 1984. Right after I became a professor, several years later, I firstly became a head of the administration office of the university. And I was back then a young, passionate person, and I just wanted to pursue justice, Imagine what was my first administration meeting was as a young professor. That was to fraud the accounting. Why did I have to do that? When there was a visiting lecturer was coming to give a lecture to the university, we had to give him about 300,000 won, but the university budget only allowed for about 25,000 won or something. That means I have to get the remaining money from somewhere else to give the lecturer 300,000 won. So I kind of faked accounting logs. But this is not one single case, right? We have multiple lecturers. So I asked, why do we do that? And the answer I got is that it is a directive or a direction from the Ministry of University. Many of the practices are now fixed, but some of them are still there. The national authority basically forcing a young professor to fake the accounting log. Is this literally a good country? Can we call this a country? I felt desperation back then. And this is still happening in every corner of the society. The irrational activity that forces people to lie and forces people to make wrongdoings. And on top of that, police come in and the prosecutors come in and so on and so forth. Sometimes an ordinary citizen feel a little bit scared when seeing a police officer or a prosecutor because we kind of are forced to make wrongdoings not willingly. One of the strong responsibilities of the government is education. But let me ask you this. The national government, and specifically the Ministry of Education, which should be in charge of the national education, is it looking at the education development direction and what should be the development way and what type of talent we nurture and what characteristics should future talent should have. Do you think the education authority know well about all these questions? We just like the coding episode that was shared by the moderator. We are not doing well. And the coding population of Korea is only a minute proportion when compared to the Chinese population. Why is this happening? Because we do not know what the future generation's new talent would be and what would be the requirement for future generation. And do you think the education authority would know? I don't think so. And what about teachers? I don't think so too. They already graduates from just university. How would they know? And the Ministry of Education says, I don't know, then it all comes down to the parents. Parents decide what to teach to their kids, and by these parents, there comes a need to create a school where more like broad-based option is available for parents. Then here's another serious question. Just like Professor Lee has mentioned, the government is calibrating everything. What type of people should be teachers and what type of subject should that person take to become a teacher? And if that person doesn't take the specific subject, or no matter how fluent he is in English, no matter how fluent in his domain like expertise, unless he or she has a license to become a teacher, he or she cannot teach as a teacher in Korea. Is this a right thing? Is it right that we see this? I don't think so. If one person is qualified, he or she can teach, even if he or she does not possess a one license. And there are so many formulas like how school should be and what textbooks we should have and so on and so forth. But the thing is that the Ministry of Education does not seem to have a good knowledge or understanding about what all these formula is about and what these all formulas should be about. What this all means is that we need more flexibility and the broad options in the education scene. But the problem is that since we are trying to do everything at one go, we are not ready. I believe you remember the Montessori education scheme. They have their own standard and criteria in nurturing their teachers, and they have high standards. But out of nowhere, when we just allow for this experimental education to happen all across the country, it will be difficult because to source the new type of teachers and these new experimental teachers, the schools will pop up just everywhere. That is why we are thinking of the way of establishing a education special zone and try to see what kind of impacts or effects we can expect by running some experiments regarding this creative and alternative to existing school system. And I think the presentation was very neatly organized. And I could feel that I have to learn more and more going forward. I want to thank all of you for putting all these efforts in putting this organization and session together. And I can see that the Jeju has made a lot of efforts in putting all this forum. So I thank you. Also, being able to talk about education is something that we all should celebrate, I guess. I hope that we can nurture this discussion out of Jeju for the full-fledged development of the special education zone. And if this works, I am sure that the public education will change in Korea, because all the different sorts of education will compete, and competition of different education schemes means that the education will only improve and get better. And the alternative schools, which was neglected by the existing regulation, will be able to get support from the country or the government. It might not be possible for them to be authorized as an official school, but if some sort of financial funding is provided, parents will be less burdened to send their kids to these alternative schools if they want to, because as of today, you need money to send your kids to alternative schools because it takes money. The tuition fee is expensive there. all the Korean people pay tax to the country, then why can't we send our kid to the good school, the school that we believe is good? I'm not a law expert, and I'm not a law expert, but I dare say that this is against Constitution. I hope that we have to celebrate the fact that we are having this discussion itself, and with that, I would like to wrap up here. Thank you. Thank you. The Special Committee for Regional Balanced Development at the 20th Presidential Transition Committee is talking about this education special zone, and the idea was firstly initiated by Chairman Kim. So thank you, Chairman Kim. If the special education zone gets vibrant here in Korea, just like it is in Jeju at the moment, I think that there will be less and less separated families, because currently there are a lot of people who are making money overseas or making money in Korea to pay for the overseas education for their kids. I have visited one small city in Indonesia, and there were so many Korean students in an international school there, and I was very surprised. Wherever there are some international schools, you can find Korean students there and the moms supporting their kids. If we can just absorb this young population and young students here, maybe we can unite so many friends and unite so many families and make them happier. And the speech was reminded of this episode of me. One of my teacher became a principal in a middle school, and the middle school's tuition fee was a little bit higher than the average, so decided to invite a very excellent pianist from the Juilliard Musical School and provided music class for about several hours. And the Ministry of Education directly contacted him and said that you cannot, and those without the teacher license cannot provide students with official class. And the all field trip requires the exception of the Ministry of Education, and my teacher got so alarmed that he quit being a principal. And also, while working for the special committee, I went down to Busan to meet this person. And this person was working in a advanced car company to hire 300 people. He announced a notification to hire people, but he couldn't hire even one person. That means that we cannot source good talent in local areas. I don't think the special education zone in local areas can solve all the problems overnight, but we have to give it a shot so that we can at least wish for the decentralization. And with that, let me invite today's panelists. We have Professor Kim Jae-gu here. Please welcome him with a big hand. Good afternoon. As was introduced, I am Kim Jae-gu, and I have majored in business. In my special committee for regional balanced development, the company, industry, job, and education are some of the focal points we're trying to focus on. From company perspective, they want to find way to source the talents of their desire. And from ordinary people perspective, they want to get a job which can give them a decent income, but still the job that would be enjoyable for them. There is this the Chinese saying that if you are near to the black, you become dark as well. So if you get closer to something dark, something sinister, you get darker. And if you approach something red, you also turn red as well. If I try to literally translate the Chinese saying. Why I am saying this If you are in a good education environment and be surrounded by good people, you can even turn better. And there is one old Chinese story that the mother of one person moved 3 times to give his son a good education environment. And I'm sure that each and every participant here is here because he or she is interested in the education as well. If I'm here to share the US episodes, I hear that if the people whose parents are inventors or whose neighbors are inventors are likely to have patents. The likelihood is like 99%. And if you look at the people who hold patents, in terms of the lifelong income, they can garner 4 times more income than those who don't possess patents. So some of the people do grow in a good environment where they are surrounded by the creative people. And this will be pointed out by the professor from the the lecturer from the University of California, Berkeley, who will join us. But I want to mention the specific area in the United States where the Stanford University is located. That area is especially famous because there are so many inventors, and the public education there is really competitive. And of course, everything is expensive there. The tuition fee is expensive, and the expense of living cost is really expensive. But people go there. Parents flock there because they want to give their kids a better education environment. Why I'm saying this? Because I want to give you some evidence that Korea needs a special education zone. For the success of the special education zone, I want to mention what is going on here in Jeju. In order to develop the Jeju's special economic zone, and in order to give some suggestions and implications to the entire country, let me just give you some of my suggestions. As for Jeju, it is kind of leading region. And I have my friend from the Regional Balance Development Committee from the Daegu area, and Susongdong. He's specifically from Susongdong, Daegu, and Susongdong is often said that it is a Gangnam of Daegu area, which means it is the most wealthy area and most developed area, basically. And there are some of the good schools there, like 4 or 5 of them. What's surprising is that people don't go there, despite the fact that Daegu has some good schools. They visit Singapore, Malaysia, even Jeju when they turn to high school students. For the better environment, the parents sacrifice themselves and give their kids a better environment. Jeju has already achieved a modest success. Then I think it is now important for us to find out the reason behind Jeju's success and how we can replicate the success factors all across the society in Korea. For me, after what Professor Lee already mentioned, I want to add on these. In order for Jeju to succeed as a special education zone, I believe that it is important to attract good companies, and through good education, we have to nurture entrepreneurs who will establish their company in Jeju. That means we can create an ecosystem, the ecosystem of knowledge and the technology. And once we can establish this ecosystem and virtuous cycle here, people will decide to settle down here. Rather than having this temporary visitor who only study in Jeju and leave after that, rather than that, having an ecosystem to basically encourage them to settle down in Jeju would be beneficial to Jeju as well. And when the special education zones pop up in diverse other parts of Korea, people would go there, right? But from the Jeju residents' perspective, if you remember, As for Kakao or the Daum company back then, they sent some of their employees to Jeju and let them stay here for about a year or two. But from Jeju's perspective, I think it's going to be important for Jeju to be able to invite the headquarters of these companies going beyond that. And to make this happen, technological prowess and the competence is required, and that means we have to do a better job in the high education or tertiary education. And I think these are some of the areas that Jeju can think deeply about. Jeju has been doing a good job and has been running fast in terms of the special education zone. However, for the sake of the larger mantra of decentralization, I hope to see Jeju creating a model to prove that this model can actually work for the entire part of Korea. To wrap up, policy-wise, I had made a lot of discussions at the special committee, but if I may repeat myself, as was mentioned in the presentation made by Mr. Lee, we can see diverse characteristics if you look at the government, and one characteristic is that there is this diverse fragmentation. There are so many special zones. There are special economic zones, special trade zones, and so on and so forth. I believe that the special education zone should not be in charge of one single authority or the initiative of one single authority. I think that we have to emphasize that the local government is at the reign of this initiative. And I think we have to persuade the authorities of this. Currently, the overlapping of the special education zone is not allowed in Jungmun, in Seogwipo, or any other area. If one specific area is designated as special economy zone, we cannot set this zone as a special education zone. But I think we have to allow that so that we can create a synergy. And I think this innovation in administration would be a very important thing. Secondly, to attract companies and entrepreneurs, we have to make efforts in Jeju. Here, I want to make a request to the provincial office and the governor of the provincial office of the Jeju, and they have to be a smart innovator, smart administrator. To create a new type of industry, we need a live test bed, and to allow Jeju to become a live test bed, I hope to see more deregulation. And I hope to see a bigger incentive to attract more players and more companies. And if we attract good talents, it will be beneficial for these companies as well. Jeju is doing a great job and is renowned for doing great practices, and I hope that we can replicate this across the society. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you, Professor Kim. Well, Professor Barry King Green, who was supposed to join us via Zoom, has not been able to join us. And which means that we would have more time for a discussion. So, Professor Kim Jae-gu was a research professor at Stanford University. Stanford University, Berkeley University, where they have close cooperation with venture capital and startups. And so they were able to produce leading IT companies because there was this trilateral cooperation among schools, venture capital, and companies or the corporates. You need to have good people. The batteries, semiconductors, EVs. We do not have enough people. And the battery companies are building factories in the United States. Actually, they're building 14 of such factories in the US, which means that we will not be able to create that many jobs. And they are building such plants in other countries because they were just not able to get the people they need. And about 200,000 people graduate from university every year, and about half of them go to the Seoul metropolitan area. So if they do receive coding education in Seoul and join IT companies, they will be able to make more money. But then, because they have to make money once they have joined the companies, they will not be able to marry on time, and that is why there's such a low birth rate. So now,
그 사실은
Since we have time, I want to add one more thing. I just want to be punctual, so I skipped one of my points. I want to add one more thing. On top of the company nurturing, I think we have to talk about how we can nurture good talent. Jeju is a region specialized in education. I hope that Jeju can lead in a bold manner. I mentioned the headquarters of large companies, and I mentioned the large companies sending some of their employees over to Jeju. What about we create a company here in Jeju? I mean, company and university here. And I mentioned like Silicon Valley, like Stanford and Berkeley, and they are so good areas, so good universities. But in the United States, there are so many dropouts. 20% of these prestigious university students just quit. They decide to quit. And when it comes to MBA course, in the United States, it takes 2 years. But the number of students trying to get an MBA is decreasing significantly. One of the reasons is the boom in startup business. But many say that they cannot expect the rewards that commensurates the amount of investment in MBA. And that is because there are other better alternatives available to them. I think you are familiar with the concept of Microsoft certificate. And ERP and SAP, all this software specialized education is provided in this alternative training center in the Microsoft certificate. And Microsoft supports this because by nurturing this SAP and the ERP specialist, it's going to benefit the Microsoft going forward. And in this Cupertino area, right next to the Stanford, there, the employees or the members of the company are taught in a very meticulous and detailed manner by the founder of the company. And some of other brands, when hiring, they open a school basically, and they give out certificates to the member or the students of the school. And also, Busan is trying to attract DigiPen. In the Carnegie Mellon University or many other universities, you can see a lot of similar cases. Maybe as for the Carnegie Mellon, there is a center which specializes content. You do not have to buy a university or you do not have to buy a company. Put directly, when being bought by a university, you will end up being bounded by the name value of the university. I think you can collaborate with the US partners and create a course under the name of the university. Maybe you can join the operated course where you can nurture the students in the areas where you want the students to be nurtured. Jeju is a city of innovation, so I think this can happen. I hope that Jeju can think about this possibility and lead this innovative ideas. Thank you.
네, 감사합니다.
yes, thank you. He has talked about in-house universities in the United States.
를 빼서 인지니어를
President Park Chung-hee established Kumo Engineering School in order to produce engineers. And for the fourth industrial revolution, we need more flexible education. I have visited over 20 universities as a member of the Presidential Transition Committee, and have learned how the dire situations that these universities are in. SK Hynix was going to build a plant in Kumi, but they withdrew that plan because there were not enough human resources. And the universities in local areas just do not have the necessary finance in order to be able to get the professors that could teach about semiconductors. And because they don't have the professors, they're not able to set up departments to teach semiconductors. In universities in Seoul, the alumni, they make the donations because the universities are not allowed to increase the tuitions. And so they don't have the finances. Anyway, now I said that there are 14 battery companies here in Korea that are building plants in the U.S. because they don't have the people that can work at those plants. And so now let's listen to Professor Park Ki-kwan of the Sangju University. He is also a member of the Special Committee for the Regional Balanced Development of the 20th Presidential Transition Committee. Yes, I am Professor Park Ki-kwan, as was just introduced. And I believe that I'm given about 10 minutes. And we also have Dr. Hyun, who's going to talk after me. Well, special educational zones. There's a reason that we're talking about such zones. We have unbalanced development of the country. We, as you know, the Korean population are concentrated around Seoul metropolitan area. So I think this is, I would describe the situation as a spatial inequality. And for such a spatial inequality is taking place here in Korea because everything is at the center.
이러한 기울어진 운동장
And so there's unfair of structure here. And young people, you see, the young people in the local areas, they are moving to Seoul metropolitan area. And this is not just of something that is happening for the time being, and they have been happening for a long time, and they are currently underway. So we have to think about why. And one of the reasons that we can think of is the education. And that is why we need educational reforms, reforms that would change paradigms. And we can do so by introducing so-called educational special zones. And that is why the Professor Kim of the Special Committee for the Regional Balanced Development of the Transition Committee has first made this proposal to set up the zones. I completely agree with what Professor Lee Ki-woo has said. And I would like to make a few comments about things that we need to think about more deeply. And one of them is about a clear definition of what the especially education zone is about. I think we need to have a clear-cut definition. As Professor Lee Gi-woo had said, we cannot just be critical. I mean, we cannot just simply say, what is this new educational zone different from the previous educational zones? During the MB administration, we had a special educational zones for internationalization. And so this new educational zone or the special educational zones, I mean, how would they be different from the previous ones? So we need to have a very clear definition here. And here we have to clarify who the suppliers are. I'm talking about the suppliers of the educational services. Is it the Ministry of Education had been exclusive provider of educational services, which means there was no competition, and that is why the education was not the educational service was not efficient or effective. So we have to do away with the regulation so that we can improve the overall quality of the public education, and in order to do that, the special education zone is proposed as a means. And parents and students, they really did not have much of a choice. And so we should be able to give more choices. Freedom to choose. Well, that is quite important. And about curriculums, we should enable creativity. We should enable more different education, so that we can increase the satisfaction level of the students, the customers of these educational services. As you have heard from the presentation, of course, the established educational system is important, but there are many unlicensed alternative schools, and these schools are providing excellent education. I mean, these are good schools, but they are not authorized. And so these unauthorized alternative schools, and maybe we should establish rules and we should do legislation so that we can help them with the issues of teachers, of the financing support. And experts or specialists, I mean, they can be teachers, they can be instructors, but they're not allowed to do so as of now. And so maybe we should have some sort of a decree on the operation of alternative schools, so that these alternative schools will have more freedom to be operated. And there are excellent alternative schools with excellent curriculum, but they do need operational and financial support. And we could utilize the educational grant related systems, so that these schools can receive the grants to provide a better education. And educational zones, when they are designated, they should be aligned with the developmental ideology of the locality that they are located in. So the local politicians or the local community leaders, they would have their own ideology for development, and they could actually have schools, that are in line with their ideology, and I believe would enhance the development, and the real estate property the prices would increase. And that's not that is. it's not conducive to realizing the benefit of the educational zones. And the new government has focused on educational special zones and opportunity special zones. And opportunity special zones is so the companies, the institution could relocate to so-called opportunity zones. And they would be receiving tax incentives, and they would get deregulation, and they would also get different educational systems. Even if the companies want to make the investment, if they don't have the people that they that can work in those companies, the companies would not relocate. And so, educational system is very much needed. I mean, good educational system is very much needed for these opportunity zones to succeed. So education is still a very important part of these such opportunity zones. So we have to have flexible educational systems that can produce the human resources that the companies need. Let's look at the cases of Sweden and Germany. They have recently changed their curriculums so that the students can receive career training or career education.
아주
So when the students are young, when they're young, they can be taught about the programs or taught about the companies that are located in their community. And about 65% of the graduates in these communities go on to work for the companies that are located in those communities. And so educational reforms and the paradigm changes do not occur easily. And if you look at Finland, which is known for excellent education, they have a national education commission that has been responsible for reforms. And
거쳤어요.
it took them about 2 years to have the reforms. And during that reform process, they had engagement of different stakeholders, such as parents, scholars, public servants, and so on. And they had a continuous discussion so that they can come up with the consensus for the educational reform. And so I believe that we should do something like this at Korea's National Educational Commission. So education is our educational system is something that is going to determine the next 100 years of our country. And for educational reforms to occur, there has to be consensus. And so the paradigm changes. Well, and whether these educational zones will succeed or not, well, we will have to wait and see. We have to understand the most important thing is that we provide a creative and a flexible educational system where students and parents have a right to choose. And I believe that should be the direction that we should seek. With that, I would like to conclude my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of problems were pointed out. And one of the things we need is the artificial intelligence related talent. When it comes to artificial intelligence, it sounds something big and grandiose, but it makes use of big data, and many of them are related to mathematical like computation and equation. So those who are good at math are good at AI as well. But I remember seeing this. Those who enter the engineering like university don't know how to do differentiation. So we have to educate them of the differentiation and the integral in the university because currently it is not a mandate for them to learn this. And I asked a high school teacher and he said that 2/3 of the high schoolers just give up on mathematics since mathematics is not an important like subject for them to get to the university. They just give up and just decide to sleep in the math class. And since these high schoolers are not educated in the core like requirements for the AI sector, we cannot expect that we will have like AI talent. And I think this like shouts the need to fix diverse problems. And last but not least, we have another panelist here, and we have Ms. Hyunwoo Seng, another commissioner of the Special Committee for Regional Balanced Development. Thank you. Nice to meet you. First of all, thank you, Commissioner Yi, for the wonderful presentation, and I fully enjoyed the message delivered by Chairman Kim Byung-jun and the two panelists before me. I'm from Jeju. So when Professor Kim gave a lot of suggestions to Jeju, I appreciate it. But I thought that rather than giving some of the suggestions, I can contribute to this discussion by giving you some more examples. President said that we will focus and highlight more on the local areas going forward. And to make sure this happens, I want to share Jeju's examples and so that we can find out some implications. And I'll be brief. And let me share some of the Jeju's examples. The internet is not working. Okay. I believe that a lot of you are Jeju Islanders. According to the Special Act of the Jeju Special Self-Governing Province, we are doing a project of English special zones, and I want to share what achievements we have seen and what would be the future tasks. As you are well aware, in 2002, with the request of the Jeju and with the need of the national government, we became a Jeju Special Self-Governing Province. This was a new attempt in Korea back then. Chairman Kim was a main agent which enabled the opening of the Jeju Special Self-Governing Province. So on this occasion, I want to say I thank you and I respect you. With the launch of the Jeju Special Self-Governing Province, the government wanted to establish a regulation-free zone which can befit the international standard, and the government wanted to give high level of autonomy to Jeju so that Jeju can be an exemplary model of local autonomous politics and also a leader, and to make Jeju a leader in diverse areas such as health and tourism. The International Free City was an ideal vision that we painted when establishing Jeju as a self-special governing province. And at the government level, in December 2016, the English-only speaking town establishment plan was devised. And after that, the basic plan and direction was announced to make this happen in Jeju, which was followed by the agreement to make this project happen in Jeju. And also after that, under the initiative of Mullet, we have designated some areas of Jeju to turn it into an English-speaking zone. And in the Jeju Special Act, we have established a legal foundation to make this English-only speaking city in Jeju. To give you the background of this project, at the national level, after the year 2001, I believe you remember that there were a lot of huge demand for students to go overseas to study abroad, and that meant a huge outflow of money outside of country. We wanted to absorb this population back into Korea so that we can decrease the outflow of capital of the country and to decrease the sorrow of the separated families basically. And also 4+1 core projects include this education related problem at Jeju as well. By nurturing education and by establishing English-speaking special zone, we wanted to absorb some of the population which were living in Korea and nurture Jeju as a good education leader. In Daejeongup area, about 390,000 pyeongs of area was designated and 1.9 trillion won was invested to establish 7 international schools and build commercial areas. And in 2021, as of 2021, including Korean international schools, UK schools, and the US schools are there. As many as 4,568 students are working there. That means out of the total capacity, the attendance rate is about 87.8%. That means we are seeing a visible results from the English-speaking zone project. Then what would be the achievement or the benefit of this project? We could, like I said, minimize the outflow and dissolve some of the social issues such as father living alone in Korea because of the families going overseas. And only last year we could save about 140 billion won. And in accumulation, we could save about 980 billion won by absorbing these overseas students. And since about 8% of the Jeju's people are going to schools in this English-speaking zone, we are giving Jeju students an opportunity to become a global leader by interacting with these global citizens or the global friends from all across the countries. And also, we are creating the city as a city where people can actually live in. It is not just a place for education, and that means this city is contributing to the economic development of Jeju as well. The population inflow is growing as well. About 10,000 people came into this area, and this befits the title city. And I want to highlight that in English education town, the National Park of Gojawar was established, as you are well aware. That means Jeju's unique ecological assets and environmental assets are being utilized. Jeju's culture, Jeju's pristine natural scenic beauty are utilized there, and I think this English-speaking town is helping the world know more and better about Jeju's uniqueness and beauty. I served as a mayor of Seogwipo, and in Seogwipo there is a Hall of Fame. And there are a lot of performances taking place there. A lot of people from the drama scene, the music scene come here. And listening to those performing artists, they say that the audience in Jeju is so well behaving and so well mannered, and they appreciate their performance way better than those even in Seoul. I cannot just pinpoint like international schools as reason, but still, since there are so many people from diverse backgrounds, I think this is contributing to the overall like sophistication of the Jeju like citizens or living there. And that is becoming a driver to make these people live there as well. So it seems that we are succeeding right now, but that does not mean that we do not have any more remaining tasks. To get here, we had gone through a lot of ups and downs. And about this English education city, I do see and feel the need to improve the regulation. And there are a lot of people who are living here who are from the different background. And because of the cultural differences, we see some of the social problems, like establishment of the high school likes and is helping to create a like full education cycle which helps a person to kick off their primary education in Jeju and finish their tertiary education in Jeju. And I hope that by adding more and more like amenities such as like cultural facilities and so on and so forth, I hope we can turn this town into a even more habitable region. Habitable city. Not just as a test bed, I hope that Jeju can actively contribute to the spread of this good initiative and practice. And I hope you give a lot of support to Jeju for this initiative. This leading effort. Thank you. 1.5 hours of time that was allocated to me and to us is over. And I see that parents are very satisfied to send their kids here to the international school here because they do not have to be separated, because without the Jeju International School, they would send their kids to overseas countries. But because of the school here in Jeju, they do not have to live as a separated family. I hope that we can continue on this successful practice so that we can save families from separating apart. And unfortunately, I think our time is up. We have a lot of practitioners from the education scene, but I'm sorry that we cannot give you more time and open the floor because of the time constraints. Let me just once again thank all the speakers and the Chairman Kim and all the panelists for the wonderful